We're living in an epidemic of outrageous online content.
I want something that's going to trend, like something crazy that I'd do.
The kind that stops you mid-scroll and makes you ask,
is this real?
Women are lazy if they're not going to give...
Is this person real?
Pasta, cheese and hot dog.
In this bizarre online landscape where hysteria is the goal, reactions don't just follow content.
Who is this empowering to?
They become the content.
It's the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
In this video, we'll explore how manufactured outrage has evolved into an entire entertainment ecosystem, how it's being monetized, exploited, and how the media environment is increasingly pulling us away from reality. It all begins with anger.
Anger has long been a driving force in media, shaping the narratives that capture our attention and influencing what we deem significant. In the 1990s, stories about Indian cotton farmers resisting global corporations or Irish coastal villages ravaged by oil companies didn't just report events, they humanised tragedy. Anger wasn't just an emotion, it was a catalyst for change. Celebrity gossip and paparazzi culture, on the other hand, offered a more vapid diversion. Did you hear those two kissed on live television? This type of news, while more trivial, still stayed tethered to real events and people. But fast forward to today and things have taken a stranger turn. The focus of modern outrage has morphed into something unrecognisable. Fake story times, morally questionable stunts and polarising opinions now dominate our feeds, shaped and amplified by the invisible forces of social media algorithms.
But how did we go from discussing to reacting? To understand that, we have to understand anger itself.
When you see a video that makes you angry, do you scroll past? Probably not. Instead, you might open your notes app, start typing out a response, maybe compulsively checking the comments, searching for validation, someone to disagree with. The point is, anger is not like other emotions. It does not fade. It lingers, unresolved, leaving you with a nagging sense that something has to be set right. And social media platforms are engineered to harness this emotional potency. Algorithmically, a share carries more weight than a like. It signals that you felt an emotion strong enough for it to spread. In this way, virality follows its own logic. Intensity over substance. And it appears this knowledge has gotten into the wrong people's hands.
The more people that are obsessed with me, the more it drives traffic.
Enter Bonnie Blue, a polarising figure with a history of ethically ambiguous behaviour. You might have heard the stories, kicked out of countries, targeting barely legal teens, and unapologetically bragging about how the whole thing only makes her richer. Cue daytime TV. Bonnie is invited in to share her side of the story. Predictably, outrage follows. People flood forums, call into radio shows, and complain online. Was this a cynical grab for ratings? Proof of declining media standards? People are no longer just watching. They're reacting, dissecting, analysing motivation, tone, and questioning the authenticity of the whole thing. Before long, we're no longer talking about what was said, but why it was said, and whether it even deserves our attention in the first place. In the philosophy of language, this phenomenon is known as meta-discourse. It is a discussion about a discussion. Meanwhile, Bonnie isn't just caught up in this attention, she is actively directing it. She accepts every media opportunity. Podcasts, interviews, more podcasts. She'd go to the opening of an envelope, for God's sake. One outrageous podcast appearance spawns 1,000 takes. Can you believe that she said that? Quickly becomes, I can't believe that people are defending this. Audiences start bickering with one another. Meanwhile, an entire ecosystem of entertainment quietly grows around the absurdity of this person, the spotlight widening to include anyone who engages. And as long as the discourse continues, the bank balance grows. And Bonnie, she understands this dynamic better than anyone. But these actions go beyond simple opportunism. They illustrate a systemic pattern where moral boundaries are treated as a performance and intent becomes irrelevant. By leaning into society's perception of amorality, individuals turn criticism into an asset. And when someone's brand identity is born out of controversy, then backlash no longer poses a risk. Instead, it becomes a strategy. Bonnie is not an outlier when it comes to the art of alchemizing online rage into profit. To understand just how lucrative this formula is, let's take a look at another example, perhaps one without OF to avoid inflating the numbers. Candy's Cooking is a viral TikTok account whose name alone invites skepticism. Can someone like this call themselves a cook? With over 500,000 followers, you might expect a cookbook or maybe a brand deal with Smeg. Instead, her LinkedIn bio takes you to her Cameo page, where she charges $42 for a personalized video message. For context, if just 1 in 2,000 of her viewers made a purchase, Candy could earn over $5,000 on an average view video. That's a sum equivalent to about 10 weeks of working full-time on minimum wage in the UK. It's not only about going viral, it's about transforming that virality into money. Candy's cooking represents a more benign take on the rage bait trend. Her lasagna video, for instance, might offend Britain's culinary pride, but steers clear of the ethical controversies surrounding individuals like Bonnie. However, it reflects the same underlying dynamic. Leveraging performed absurdity for clicks, likes, and monetization. This distinction matters because it highlights how even the more harmless forms of this trend still feed the same attention-driven ecosystem. But what has led us to this point? Well, imagine a world where anyone could create and air a show. No oversight, no review, broadcast to millions. Once upon a time, that would have seemed crazy. But today, it's pretty close to our reality. 5 to 10 years ago, Instagram was still dominated by Kayla Itzine's workouts and celebratory life milestones from people that you actually knew. But gradually, it stopped favouring the humdrum content of everyday connections, and the platforms that once brought us closer to the familiar began prioritising something else entirely. Content from strangers, framed as discovery. This shift ushered in what I call post-familiar social media era, an endless stream of content from people you will never meet.
So we went from following people we know, people in physical proximity to us in our lives, to following more and more of what the algorithm feeds us. These small shifts in online consumption patterns happen at an inconceivably huge scale. Take Bevo, for example.
He's a TikToker who gained popularity and achieved platform-wide recognition for swallowing his dinner without chewing. This video has 8 times the viewership of the most watched episode of Love Island in its entire history. No production team, no network, just a guy from Essex with a phone and a slanted jaw. It's this new landscape where even the most mundane corners of the internet can turn into cultural moments, and stardom achieved literally overnight. And for those actively chasing the spotlight, like the ones craving a rush of notifications, inciting mass outrage can become a very alluring lever. It's a way to secure visibility in an online world overflowing with failed attempts to stand out. Even mainstream broadcasters, long seen as the gatekeepers of content, have begun to mimic these tactics to stay relevant. Take ITV This Morning, the kind of show your mum might watch while folding the laundry. It's daytime TV, and they invite an internet personality on to discuss just how much money she makes by selling her own sweat online. It's not even really the sweat thing that's unsettling, it's the whole arrangement. Like, everyone has silently agreed that this is what counts as entertainment now.
In this process, the focus shifts to generating maximum discussion.
Not by creating meaningful or interesting content, but by creating content that is designed to ripple outward. And it works. Broadcasters secure views and maintain their relevance in an increasingly competitive online landscape where the fight for corporate sponsorship dollars grows more desperate. But in this whole debacle of absurd content from TikTokers, entrepreneurs, broadcasters, whoever happens to be the controversial figure appearing on your screen, there is one key ingredient that they rely on: ambiguity. Oh, you didn't know what I said? I said, is it real or fake? Satire or sincere? Acceptable or unacceptable? You're not sure. And that's where the goldmine lies. In the ambiguity, because in ambiguity there's debate, and in debate there's engagement, and in engagement there's shares, and in shares there's popularity and exposure and money. It all starts with us being a little bit confused. In Bonnie's instance, the public shamed her for being predatory, but in response she claimed that she was operating within societal law. This amplified the ambiguity and therefore discussion around the ethics. She even goes as far as staging altercations. This deliberate confusion acts as a catalyst for ongoing discussion. In this process, human outrage evolves away from being the natural byproduct of an event
and morphs into a sort of metasized construct, detached from real life. This content relies on triggering our most primitive emotions.
Rage, disgust, disbelief, throwing arousal into the mix if they want to double down. And while it may seem like a pretty straightforward way of securing a growing bank balance, it comes at a significant personal cost. In this process, privacy is compromised, credibility is eroded, and personal identity becomes little more than a caricature. distorted and shaped by performative absurdity. What begins as a quest for recognition or money ultimately leads to what I would consider to be a profound personal sacrifice. But why are people, especially young people, so willing to trade their personal lives for scrutiny in exchange for the promise of money? What conditions have shaped this climate where humiliation and spectacle are treated like mere currencies? It's not as baffling as it may seem. Are you terrified of having a normal job? Being stuck in the 9-to-5 grind? Or worse, nobody knowing who you are? You're not alone. In this era of macro, micro, and nano celebrities, being ordinary is quite frankly embarrassing. So step into the spotlight, post that TikTok, say something obnoxious, become someone. We live in a culture that glorifies material wealth and online visibility during times of mass economic uncertainty. A culture that is making ordinary lives seem inadequate.
You've got to be over the top to make it in life.
But while this pursuit of fame might seem aspirational, it's impossible to separate it from the pressure cooker that is the modern economy. Inflation is rising, wages are stagnating, and the cost of living is climbing. It's a system that pushes people to get creative or get desperate. Many individuals openly admit to turning to online platforms to ease financial struggles. The promise of flexible income feels like an escape from the monotony of office jobs or the endless grind of just getting by. But when the illusion of easy money doesn't always pan out, I'm sure that the pressure to escalate content with controversial or extreme behaviours can feel overwhelming. And for some, the idea of returning to the fluorescent lit aisles of the local supermarket only to be recognised as "you're one there who posts on TikTok" is enough to make them double down no matter what the cost. Lily Phillips, like Bonnie Blue, is known for taking sexual content to extremes. One Twitter user stated, "Lily Phillips and her mother are what you get when the entrepreneurial spirit of the middle class confronts downward mobility in an economy with precious few viable industries left." The implication is clear here. For many individuals who push the boundaries for clout, extreme actions are liable to stem from a lack of better options. In an economy where traditional jobs are no longer providing the same sense of stability, such actions can be seen as the only way to gain true financial freedom.
I'm going to start doing it. I can pay my bills off because I'm struggling right now.
While this critique highlights systemic pressures, it does of course risk oversimplifying motivations, but it would be naive to ignore the cultural and economic forces at play.
Even if this type of content starts out with a genuine intent,
as the person behind the camera leans further into taboo or controversy, the views naturally start to climb. At which point they do what content creators do, which is optimize for performance.
in this way, algorithms can financially groom individuals toward increasingly extreme behaviours. But how does the performance of these extreme behaviours actually impact us as a collective? Well,
controversial content often spawns reactive commentary, leading to sweeping moralistic declarations, like "OF girls are ruining society," which quickly morphs into things like "girls these days are for the streets." Then there's hot takes on the state of the dating marketplace, and all of these conversations are deemed totally relevant. These reactions reflect a cultural lens that is warped by the relentless pursuit of virality. A lens that frames individuals like the people we've discussed as generational archetypes or emblematic of broader social attitudes, rather than seeing them as the anomalies that they are. The irony is glaring. The attention these figures command is wildly disproportionate to their relevance. They are statistical outliers monopolising the spotlight, undeserving of the collective attention spent dismantling their behaviour and opinions. Not to sound like Mother Teresa, but if we view media and the collective's attention as the piece of valuable real estate that it is, then these figures are displacing narratives that truly matter. Like that ITV This Morning segment could have interviewed some disruptive artist in the UK, an NHS nurse, and they were talking about selling sweat. Like, it's gentrification, but the price is our attention and the property is hysteria. Insane topics that were once relegated to sites like 4chan are now entering the mainstream. And again, not to sound like Mother Teresa, mainstream subject matter will pop up in places like playgrounds. Somebody please think of the children. Of course, at its core, it all comes down to how we engage. However, emphasising individual responsibility in this context is akin to blaming citizens for not recycling enough, while governments grant tax breaks to oil conglomerates that are devastating ecosystems. Algorithms are the true drivers here, engineered to exploit something deeply human, our need to react. Platforms like TikTok make rage profitable, not just for creators, but for themselves. These technocracies provoke backlash, feed off of it, yet remain largely insulated from its consequences. Even individuals caught up in these cycles are protected in ways that feel unprecedented. Rage, after all, usually manifests physically. Adrenaline spikes and you feel an urge to act. In the past, this would have led to real-world consequences. But online, this energy is redirected to something safer, something distant. It unfolds in angry comment sections, a surge of words that rarely escape the screen. Contained, commodified, and endlessly profitable. While people sharing this outrageous content have their own motives we've explored a little bit, there's another layer to this. Rage can serve an existential function for the viewer themselves. It offers the illusion of control, a momentary affirmation of the self in a world that often renders us powerless. And if, like me, you see the internet as a mirror of the collective psyche, which is pretty much what I explore in these videos, like and subscribe, then the outrage economy isn't just a phenomenon. It's reflecting something uncomfortable. Our internal struggle with inertia. Because our fiery reactions, however satisfying in the moment, often reinforce the very system we're railing against. Think of a viral moment that sparked outrage. It was shared, dissected, debated endlessly. A week later, gone, forgotten, replaced by the next thing in the relentless churn. What shocks us today will feel trivial tomorrow. Over time, audiences may grow desensitized, forcing these systems to either evolve or collapse. The rise of lowbrow content doesn't mean our society is doomed. It's a symptom of deeper societal issues that need to be confronted. Perhaps this moment is necessary, a messy purge that brings forth our frustrations to the surface. This isn't about rejecting outrage, it's about reimagining its role. Harnessed thoughtfully, it becomes a force for accountability, for challenging power structures that thrive on division. The question isn't whether we'll feel angry again. That's inevitable.
The question is how discerning we'll be with that anger. That discernment shouldn't just live in our feeds or on our phones. It should inform how we think about the platforms we use and the cultural values that we help normalise.
How we choose to act could determine whether this moment of frustration becomes another churn in the relentless cycle, or a step towards something better. Resounding happy ever after. It's not a happy ever after because we're still caught in the cycle of shite. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that it made a little bit of sense at the very minimum. You know, that's really what I strive for, is just to make sense. So if you felt I make sense made, then make sure click like, or make subscribe also. If you make subscribe, I'd be really, really happy. No, but in all seriousness, thank you so much for watching this. And yeah, if you want to follow more of the internet culture stuff, please click subscribe. If you haven't already, click a thumb up, and watch my other videos, because my watch time is like really growing. I'm watering it like a really nice houseplant. I need to do this thing with thumbnail crack. So I need to do my best angry face. Angry. Grrr. I'm angry. I'm so furious. Still stay tethered. Still stay tethered. Still stay tethered. Still stay tethered.